Jay, that's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
The crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
David Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's the flag. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. There's flags. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened? Oh shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Only Football Podcast. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing a few of the games from Week 12, and also, it is the Thanksgiving special episode. We've got 3 games tomorrow. We've got a Black Friday game. We got some games on Sunday, and of course, Monday Night Football. Kyle and I are going to go through all those and give you guys our picks and predictions. And of course, we're going to go into our top 5, and we're going to end it off with the Chives with Kyle. Let's get it. America is football.
America is football. Football is America. And if you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass. For the moment in time, I'll give it 10. Oh my god.
No!
You loved it.
30 to 27. Chiefs win. Chiefs win 30 to 20. Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Only Football Podcast. This is not our first, not our second, but our third Thanksgiving here on the Only Football Podcast. And it's so weird because it seems like the Cowboys and the Lions have played every single one of those years.
Something about it, right? I think it's because
I don't know what it is.
I think it's because we started the podcast, right? I think that's the difference.
Yeah, that's probably it. All right. So we're obviously going to talk about Thanksgiving football. We're like you said, we're going to talk about the playoffs. But before we do that, your computer went down for a little bit. It's back, and your background's different. Like we got to talk about this, but we can't just not talk about it.
We can't just glaze over. No, it's a few of you, I was putting it out there during week 12 that my computer had gone down. I was talking to Kyle. Kyle was going live on his own. I was trying to put out some stuff. It just wasn't working. So something was wrong with my computer. Took it to Best Buy, took it to Geek Squad. Shout out to those people, by the way. They are awesome. They do great work, and they explain everything. So shout out Best Buy and Geek Squad. Best Buy, sponsor us. Sponsor us, please, God, sponsor us. We need this. And so I was pretty much out for all of week 12. And during that time, I was like, well, I got to do something. I got to do something in the bear cave. I gotta spruce it up. So I changed everything. I changed the background. I changed my desk. My wife had actually bought me one of those automatic lift desks.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, I got to do something that makes it look cool when I come back. And I was able to do that. I put up some really cool lights here. They're orange. Can't really see them in the background, but I've got like
you can feel them.
You can feel the warmth. You can feel the bears here in the front and in the back. So I was like, I got to do something really, really cool so when I come back, everybody's just like, whoa.
It worked.
And it happened.
Even me. I was
even you.
Whoa. But I think what's really fascinating about your background, that at least what sticks out to me as a person that has been doing this for a couple of years with you, is that the Bears are probably not making it to the playoffs this year.
No.
But last year, you took all your Bears gear down. I think you've upped your Bears gear
I have
this year.
I
So that
have.
tells me something about the psyche of a Bears fan in 2024.
Oh yeah.
That it is not hopeless. They do have their quarterback, and they just it's a totally different energy than what we were feeling last year with Fields.
100%.
So I'm happy that even though it's not necessarily working out this year, that Bears fans are still optimistic about the future. I think I always say this: you can lose games, but you can't lose the fans. The fans
Exactly.
need to have something that they believe in. And it's when you don't have that, I mean, it's rough. Right now, the Giants are kind of going through that.
Yeah, 100%. No, but you're right. It's a different feeling. It's just we know where we're at. We know what we've got. We just need to make the right adjustment, and probably the most important adjustment at the coaching staff, at the coaching level. And I think going into next season, it's going to be expectations are going to be maybe a little bit higher, but we are going to go into that a little bit more positive, I would say, than what we did with Eberflus. The expectations were high and you know, all those things, but I with a new staff, Caleb Williams looks amazing with or without Eberflus fucking things up. But yeah, no, you're 100% right, Kyle.
Yeah. Well, there was just a couple games I thought we could talk about. Of course, the Bears, the Broncos, and then we can do those last. Let's just briefly talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, because I know that last week, I had Kansas City out of my top 5. I believe you had them at number 4, which I think is the lowest spot that you've had them this year.
For last week, yeah, I think 4 is the lowest, if I'm not mistaken. There's probably been some other times where they've been 5. Actually, yeah, they were number 5 for me going into week 8. Actually, that's the lowest. That's the lowest.
Interesting. So I guess just the consistency of winning just maybe brought them up a little bit. But
yeah,
of course, the Panthers played a really good game. I mean, Bryce Young had the best game of his career. And Patrick Mahomes, you know, he had some words. I don't know if it was after the game or if it was Monday after the game, but he said, yeah, I mean, I remember, because he was a Texas guy, Mahomes, Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
He said that I think Bryce Young played high school football in Texas. So he was like, I was hearing about him, and I just knew that he was going to be good in the NFL. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. I mean, Mahomes is it didn't sound like he was just trying to be polite. It felt like he really believed that at some point Bryce Young was going to work out. And
he was legit.
It's worth investigating a little bit, because look at Baker Mayfield. I mean, he was like written off, and then now he obviously is like one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and anybody would be happy to have him. So why would something like that happen to Baker Mayfield but not happen to a rookie quarterback being thrown into the fire? I've been very critical of Bryce Young, but I thought that he played a really good game. Now, it's one of those where people are going to say, well, who does this say more about? Does it say more about Bryce Young? Did it say more about the Chiefs? And I think it's both. I think it's always probably a little bit of both. But the Chiefs, they had over a minute left. They drove down and were able to get a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker, because he was, I think he's on IR, or I know he was out for this game. So they kick it, and he made it. But I mean, if he misses that kick, would you have the Chiefs outside of your top 5 this week?
Whew, that's a good question. Would I, if they lost, would I have them outside? I don't know.
Assuming that they're still in your top 5.
Yeah, and you know, obviously we're gonna go off week 12 for now. But I had them at 4. That's a rough loss. The thing is, like, it's Bryce Young and Canales. That whole benching thing with Andy Dalton coming in and seeing how, and I think Bryce Young seeing how the offense worked, like that now is starting to look good, at least a little bit, right? Like you said it yourself, right? Like he looked good in that game against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs defense hasn't been amazing. I mean, they've won them a lot of games, and you've seen the Chiefs do kind of what the Vikings did a while ago with Kirk Cousins. They were winning a lot of one-score games or such, and their defense maybe not necessarily the reason, but in this case for the Chiefs, it is the reason. Now, those two things combined, kind of what you're going with, right? Like maybe I think it's both. It says something about the Chiefs, and it also says something about Bryce Young. But would I have the Chiefs outside of the top 5? All of that kind of taking into context. I don't know, man. I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think they would be outside of my top 5. I still think they'd be 5, if not 4, what they were last year. Last week, I should say. I still think they're top 5. I mean, losing to Carolina Panthers is a bad look, but going again, they're already in the playoffs, right? They're already going to go into the playoffs, regardless of if they win the division or if not. It's looking like they're going to. To me, I'm looking at the entire thing and going, they're still a top 5 team. Now, was it a close game? Yes, but all of that taken into consideration, I still think they're top 5.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think a lot of what's going on too is that last year Kansas City just wasn't a great team.
Yeah.
And they were able to win the Super Bowl because of their defense. And people are thinking, well, that's the same team and they're going to do it again anyway. So like, what's the big deal? But I just wanted to point this one thing out because I think the general public looks at the Chiefs this year and they see the Chiefs of last year because the struggles, but they still win and they're just going to turn it on in the playoffs. But the one thing I wanted to point out was in 2023, the Chiefs in yards per game were 8th in the NFL. And now this year, Kansas City is 14th in yards per game. And now when you look at the defensive side of the ball, which is how they were so good last year, this year in opponent yards per game, they're 4th, which is top 5. And last year they were 5th. So arguably their defense may be a tiny bit better. Last year, they gave up 298 yards per game. This year, they're giving up 300. So very similar. But offensively, you're talking about a middle team. They're mid. They are mediocre. Let's just call it what it is. Mahomes, it's very hard to open up as the MVP front runner. He was the favorite, and now he was dropped to the 5th best odds to win it. And he's falling down just because there's really no reason to give it to him. There's nothing that, I mean, besides the record, but aside from that, like I do think this might be the flukiest 9-0, 10-0 team I've ever seen in my life. The only other team that comes up is the 2008 Titans with Vince Young, who were also 10-0. And
I'll give you another one. The 2022 or 2021 Pittsburgh Steelers, Roethlisberger's last year.
That had to have been 2020 because I think we were on deployment.
Yeah, so it was probably 2020. Yeah, you're right. It was the 2020 Steelers with Roethlisberger's last year. They were 10-0 or 11-0. I think
really they were that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then there was a bunch of postponed games.
Yeah, right. But they were the ones that to me looked like, they were 10-0, but they're looking similar to the Chiefs in the fact that, like you're saying, it's a mediocre team and everybody knows it. But the Chiefs obviously have the Super Bowls to back themselves up, whereas the Steelers didn't have it. Okay, so 12-4. Yeah. And it was, did they start off 10-0, right?
Yeah. It looks like they did start out 10-0, and I think they lost in the first round of the playoffs. And honestly, the Chiefs and the Steelers, this is actually a great comparison on your part. The only difference was in 2020, the Steelers were 3rd in yards per game.
For defense or?
No, offensively.
Oh, really?
Yeah, shocking. But
Yeah, honestly.
it was still only 310 yards per game, which was just a down year for, well, actually, the leading team this year is 274 yards
Oh, wow.
per game, which that year would have been like way down, way down. So yeah, I mean there's like fluky undefeated teams all the time, but I would say this one kind of stands out to me as like, man, it's like there's just so many things that when you watch the Chiefs play, you're not like when I watch the Eagles play, and let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley. I
Oh my
mean,
God.
I mentioned this the other day. I was like, how many careers did somebody get a Hall of Fame jacket?
Mhm.
And we said they were really good and they were potentially the greatest ever, period.
Mhm.
Saquon Barkley has been so good with the Giants. Daniel
Mhm.
Jones's winning percentage with him on the field, as opposed to without him, speaks for itself. That's why I
Mhm.
couldn't fathom them not wanting to pay Barkley and then
Yeah.
giving Daniel Jones all that money. I mean, I was livid
40
about it
mil.
then, and I still don't get it. And obviously, that aged really well.
Mhm.
But now Saquon Barkley's gone. And I don't know if you saw the phone call where the general manager for the Giants, he
Mhm.
called Saquon in training camp and he was like, all right, what I think what we're going to do is we're going to let you test the market. And then he was like, okay. And then he was like, I think the right thing though for you is to let us know what the market is and give us a chance to match it. And he's like, okay. And he's like, no. Can you do that for us? Like, can you? Like, it was like, he was like,
He was
I,
desperate.
he was desperate. And it's
He
like,
was
why don't you just
desperate.
fucking pay him? How about
Yeah.
that?
How about you set the market?
How about you set the market?
Yeah.
How about the three running backs that got let go, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Josh Jacobs, all are like have a combined winning record of insane, and all the teams that they left are terrible.
Yeah.
Right? The Titans, the Raiders, and the Giants are
Mhm.
the three worst teams in the league.
Mhm.
So there's no more. I think if there was ever a case to be made, like for paying your running backs, we've arrived at that point. And Saquon Barkley is doing, I think, even the most lofty projections for Saquon to have a good year, he is just going way past that. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's getting over 200 yards rushing, like multiple times during the season.
Yeah.
Somebody that's actually targeting the all purpose or the rushing yard total. I think it was Chris Henry that has the record.
No, it was oh my God, what was his name? Chris, he was on the Titans.
Yeah, Chris Henry.
No, not Chris Henry. Chris Titans running back Chris
Oh wait, what's his last
Johnson. Chris Johnson.
Chris Johnson, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was fast too. I think he broke the record for the 40-yard dash at the time.
2009 stats, 2163 rushing yards, I believe.
Okay, I think
Something like that.
I think Saquon can break that. And with the way the quarterback's going, there's like a couple quarterbacks that you're like, okay, Lamar could get it, Josh Allen could get it, maybe Jared Goff could be in the conversation for it. But the fact that there's no quarterback that is just totally separated from the bunch, if Saquon Barkley breaks that record, he's going to win MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it's still Eric Dickerson,
2,500, right?
2105.
2105.
Yeah.
And Saquon Barkley right now
Mm-hmm.
has 1,000, basically 1,400.
Jesus.
So, I mean, if he has even one more game with 200 yards rushing, he's going to be at 1,600 with 5 games left. And he would only need 600 yards in 5 games.
Jesus.
He could totally do that.
He could. And he's already, and this is very fair in my opinion, is that he's in the MVP race right now. Obviously, it's more than likely going to go to a quarterback. But what Saquon has been able to do for the Eagles in that running back position, after the meltdown that was the Eagles last season, or at least the second half of last season. It's huge. It's huge. And then we go back to off season of Hard Knocks. It's like, I will not be able to sleep if he goes to the Eagles. And what happens? They go to the Eagles. Eagles have what, 2 losses in this season?
They have 1. Or yeah, no, 2.
They got 2, right? And Saquon is backwards jumping over people, may break the rushing record, and is an overall stud in that offense. Like, he takes so much pressure off Jalen Hurts, and Devontae Smith and oh my God, AJ Brown were hurt, and because of Saquon, it's like, oh, they only have 2 losses.
And their last loss is in September.
That's insane. It is insane. Casey said, Rick, you have a nice upgrade there. Thank you, Casey. Appreciate it. Thank you. Do it for you guys.
Yeah, dude. I mean, their last loss is in September. They're getting better every single week. And it's really like, when you look at the Eagles, I mean, they loaded up. They got 2 coordinators that are very good. They added Fangio, and then on offense, they added Kellen Moore, who is he had a bad year with the Chargers and everybody forgot about him. And it's like, yeah, Justin Herbert wasn't there. Like any coordinator is going to have a bad year if you have a terrible quarterback,
especially with the head coach.
Especially with Staley.
I'm calling the defense.
Yeah. And this is what Sirianni needs, because Sirianni's one of those coaches that I'm not really sure what he does, but when he has a lot of talent on the team and a good, he's not calling plays, all he does is, I guess, clock management. But I mean, the Eagles, they're, to me, like one of the teams that I don't think anybody wants to face. And I made a short right after that Chargers game, because the way the Eagles beat the Chargers, or
Rams,
the Rams, it was like the Rams just could not hang. Like, they made the Rams look like a bad team, basically.
Yeah.
But that the Rams aren't a bad team. It was just like the Eagles wear you down. Absolutely. And this is like a new style, because there's only one other team that comes to mind when I think about, they'll just beat the shit out of you, and by the end of the game, you're just tired and you can't stop them, and it's the Lions.
Yeah. Yep.
And now you're looking at Cooper DeJean winning potentially Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, they threw him in thinking that, all right, we're just going to have to, go with the growing pains. And there were no growing pains.
None.
And it was just, right now, this Eagles team, they might be more dangerous than the team they were when they went to the Super Bowl. And that's saying something. So I made a short right after that game, and I said, okay, we know for a fact what's happening here. Yep. The number 1 seed is going to be Detroit, or it's going to be the Eagles. But whoever it is, the number 2 seed will be the other.
Yep.
And there's really no debate on this, because if you look at the 3rd best and the 4th best record in the NFC, you got the Vikings and you got the Packers, but because they don't win their division, they automatically drop to the 5th and the 6th seed. So really, if one of these teams were to fall to a 3 or a 4 seed, they would need a team from those other divisions to have a better record than them. And they have like a 4-game lead on those teams right now. You would need the Seahawks to end up with a better record than the Eagles or the Falcons. That's the NFC South. Yep. And I'm sorry, but none of those teams are doing it. So the Lions and Eagles, they're in their own race right now for the number 1 seed. And that's just going to be the way it is. And the reason that's important to bring up is because, as we know, the number 1 seed gets a bye, but then the 2 plays the 7, and likely they will win. And then the next week, they're probably then they can't play Detroit, because Detroit is going to be coming off their bye playing another team. So it almost is a guarantee that Detroit and the Eagles are going to play in the NFC Championship game, because there's no shot that the Lions and Eagles will play each other in the wild card round or the divisional round. There's a 0% chance of that happening.
Yeah.
And I think we pretty much, where's the AFC? We don't know what the hell is going to happen. I
No.
feel like the NFC is kind of turning into a Lions-Eagles NFC championship game unless the Packers are able to upset. They're the only team I actually think could play a good playoff game and maybe come up with an upset, but that's even a stretch at this point. The Commanders, the Falcons, and the Seahawks and the Vikings are not at that level that the Lions and the Eagles are at. So your NFC, I mean, remember this, November 27th, I'm telling you, the Lions-Eagles NFC championship game is probably, in my book right now, a 90% guarantee.
Yeah, because, and we got to look at this too, right? Because I don't think you're anywhere off, because I know there were some comments on that short that were saying, unless this happens or unless that happens, right? And it was like, the West, there's going to be one team. And it's going to, at this point, it's either going to be Seattle or it's going to be Arizona. Right now, week 13, going into week 13. The South, maybe it's one, it's two as well. But I have more confidence in the Eagles and the Commanders, the Lions, Vikings, Packers, and then whoever wins the West and the South, making 7 for those to be the playoff teams. And like you said, like, I don't know if there's anyone else who could beat Detroit or Philly. Maybe the Commanders with Jaden Daniels kind of being the dynamic player that he is, can do something against.
Divisional games are weird like
they
that.
They are. And for the most part, the NFL is pretty much like, hey, 1 through 3 seeds, 1 through 3 are probably going to make it. Now, obviously there's some weird years there with the Giants in 2007, beating the Patriots. But Atlanta's got a lot of weapons. Tampa Bay, how can they get in the playoffs? Because we saw them get into the playoffs and destroy the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the West, it's like Seattle, Geno Smith can be good, but he also throws a lot of interceptions in the red zone. And it's like, that's not a good look at all. And then the Cardinals, it's like, well, they've got some players, but for some reason, some weeks they don't show up. Like, they have a good streak, and then somehow it's like James Conner runs the ball 15 times for 30 yards, and it's like Kyler Murray's throwing interceptions and not able to get it to his playmakers.
Very promising of a year, but it's a next year thing for the Cardinals.
Totally agree. But yeah, other than the Commanders and maybe the Packers, I have to agree. It's going to be a Lions and Eagles NFC championship, and that short is true. It's going to run through them.
Yeah. And the Packers last year were the first 7 seed to even win a playoff game since the NFL introduced the 7 seed. But I guess I just never really thought about the fact that the 1 and 2 seed, they cannot play in the playoffs unless they meet in the conference championship game. I never really thought about that, because they can't play in the wild card round because the Lions would have a bye.
Yep.
And then when they come out of the bye in the divisional round, the Lions will play the lowest remaining seed, which can't be the 2 seed.
And then the conference championship is all that's left.
So that's all that's left. So to me, that's just like a little fun detail that I never really thought of before.
Me neither.
Which is why those seeds are so important. But it's just funny because I just said the Eagles were the only team that plays football the way they do right now is the Lions. And then potentially that's going to be, and that's crazy to think about because the Lions only have a 1-game lead on the Eagles. And I read something earlier that was like, it's really disheartening that the Eagles, they've won all these games in a row and they're still behind the Lions. And I was like, no, it's not. Because guess what? If the Eagles would have dropped a couple games, they would be the number 1 seed would be out of reach. The Lions still have tough games coming up on the schedule. And we'll talk more about the playoffs. The Bears and Caleb Williams, he's coming off 2 really good games offensively. Like, he was nominated for Rookie of the Week. And typically, if you lose, you don't get nominated for that award.
Yeah.
But he had such a good game. I know he had a couple throws that people were like, this is what people saw when they said he could be like Mahomes. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on kind of where you're at, because I know when we lost to the Chiefs, it's just really hard to buckle up the chin strap and play a really good game again. And it felt like that's what you got out of Chicago. Like they
Yeah.
barely, the block field goal, it's against a divisional opponent, but then they play another divisional game and they played a really good game. But it's like there's this barrier that you're just like, why can't we just fucking get over it? And the fact that in the midst of that emotion, Caleb Williams seems to be playing his best football, I think is very encouraging.
Yeah, with Caleb, it's I remember, and I wanted to point this out because this is actually something that I was actually disappointed in myself, because I think it was like week 6, week 7, and you had asked the question like, you got a time machine right now. Do the Bears go back and pick Jayden Daniels? Because at the time, Jayden Daniels was playing way beyond better than Caleb Williams, and I said yes, and that is actually not my answer. At the moment,
I thought.
No, I had said yes. I was like, yeah, we're going Jayden Daniels. Absolutely. Right. Just because he was playing better. And that is not fair, because my actual answer is no. Caleb Williams, in spite of everything they've gone through this year, especially with Shane Waldron, has played so much better. Now, there was a 4-game stretch there where Caleb Williams looked so bad. The offense looked so bad. Shane Waldron was calling terrible, terrible games. And it was like, God, he can't escape this terrible offensive coordinator. And luckily now you can kind of see the shift. Like there was a few games there, weeks, 4 through 6, where he looked really good. The bye happened and then Shane Waldron shit the bed. Caleb Williams and the offense looked bad. They weren't getting it to DJ Moore. They weren't getting it to Cole Kmet.
Cardinals and Patriots.
And the Commanders on the Hail Mary. That one. That was the one that started it all, really. And then they get rid of Shane Waldron.
I was just going to say, in the Commanders, if they didn't get that Hail Mary, they would be on like a 4-game losing streak right now.
Exactly. So, and that kind of happens to Cliff Kingsbury. If I think if we look back at seasons where he's been a head coach or an even offensive coordinator, there's a certain time where it's like, oh, now the offense looks like shit. And unfortunately, that's happening to the Commanders right now. Can they go back? Can they kind of climb back up? Possibly. But despite all of that, they fire Shane Waldron, they bring Thomas Brown back, and Caleb Williams is able to kind of play the game that he's been playing since college, doing the things that he does best. And people call it Patrick Mahomes-esque, people call it hero ball. He's able to get out of the pocket and make plays happen. Now, with that being said, Thomas Brown has been doing a much better job as an offensive coordinator. He's getting it to Cole Kmet. He's getting it to DJ Moore in space. Guys are actually open. He's scheming them open. He's actually making play calls around your playmakers, which Shane Waldron, for some reason, could not do. And that's something that the Bears have kind of struggled with for so long, where an offensive coordinator or even a head coach like Nagy would come in and be like, this is my system. You have to conform to my system. And that is not how you do it. Maybe it works for some people, but for other players like a Caleb Williams, like a Jayden Daniels, guys who could be a little more dynamic, like a Justin Fields, Trubisky, things like that, going Bears quarterbacks. It's a little different if
you are like that, but you draft your quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sean Payton has his system.
Exactly.
And he was like, well, Bo Nix is the quarterback that fits it.
100%. And Bo Nix and you see what that Bo Nix and Sean Payton marriage is looking like. It's looking like an offensive rookie of the year type of 3/4 of the rest of the season looking for Bo Nix right now, right? First 2 games, he was like 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Since then, he's got like 14 touchdowns and 2 interceptions.
Yeah,
that's
he's 21
happens.
Total touchdowns and 2 interceptions in the last 10
weeks. It's ridiculous. Like, this is what happens when you are able to get your guy and you're like, that's the person that is going to fit my system correctly. Or you draft a guy like a Williams, like a Jayden Daniels, and they have to conform that offense around him, because that's how it's going to work. There's certain ways you got to go about it, and that's how you got to go about it. And Caleb Williams has been able to do that. He had awesome throws to DeAndre Swift where when he's like running out of bounds and he just like kind of jumps up in the air and gets his momentum down the sideline, and DeAndre Swift right in the breadbasket for like a 40-yard gain. He gets one to Cole Kmet. He gets one to Keenan Allen. He gets some to DJ Moore in space. And he gets them in these tight windows where he throws it over 2 levels of defense, and DJ Moore is able to bring it in for a 15, 20-yard gain. And it's like, finally, we're, with Thomas Brown as OC, we're finally able to see a Caleb Williams that we were expecting to see his rookie year, especially with all these weapons. Now, Thomas Brown is probably more than likely going to be gone at the end of the year with Eberflus. They're going to bring in a whole new staff, new head coach, and he's probably going to bring in his own guys. But this is a great, great kind of blueprint for the next guy and the next staff that comes in to be like, this is what you have to do for Caleb Williams to succeed. And I'm sure people know and have a lot of tape on Caleb where they're like, this is what I would do. This is how we're going to be successful. It's just being able to apply it in the way that Thomas Brown has now been able to apply it to be successful. Caleb's going to be Caleb. A lot of these guys are going to be their own guys, especially like a Jaden Daniels, because they're going to kind of improv a lot of their own stuff too, depending on the situation. But it's just, he's been able to overcome so much BS that is Eberflus, that was Shane Waldron, and that is this Bears offensive line, that it now looks better. And he just looks so much better against the Vikings. But in terms of like, why can't the Bears get over the hump? The only reason, in my opinion, well, a couple of reasons that Eberflus was kept: consistency at the head coach position, which I had agreed with over the offseason. Now I think it's bullshit. And the defense. The defense has deteriorated so much since that Washington Commanders game that there's zero reason to keep Eberflus.
It's weird, right? Because wasn't that your strength? And I hate this. It's like, now that Caleb's playing at a higher level, the defense can play. Like, why does it always have to be that way? Why does it always have to be that one level? Like in 2013, we had the best offense ever, but no defense. And then we win the Super Bowl in 2015 with a shitty offense and a great defense. Like, why couldn't we ever, why can't we fire on all cylinders?
Yeah, why can't, at least in like a good 3-4 game stretch, do that? And you're asking the same question that every single frustrated Bears fan has been asking for so long. It's like last year, at least the back half of last year, it was like, why can't our offense look good? Because our defense is awesome. This first half of this year was like, oh, okay, the first 3 games look like shit, but our defense luckily was able to do something. And then after that, it was like the defense just gave up after that Commanders game. And Eberflus was one of the main reasons, his defensive play calling was one of the main reasons why we kept him. And now it's gone. And now it's like, so what is it exactly that you do around here? You talked about Sirianni. I guess he just manages the clock. Eberflus can't manage the clock. He can't win challenges. He can't win on the road on Sundays. He can't beat the NFC North. He can't call a good defense. What does he do? The only thing that's keeping him around was Poles and Poles' idea of consistency as a staff and a head coach. Again, I had agreed. I was like, okay, I think that makes sense. But now it's like, none of that is working. Nothing that Eberflus did right, which was mostly defense, is working. So there's no reason to keep him. But again, Caleb has been able to just take all that and be like, I know who I am. I know now the play calling that Thomas Brown is doing is much better. And we're able to get some points on the board. And I'm able to throw for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. No interceptions since like week 5 or 6 or something like that, by the way. He's been doing awesome protecting the ball. And it's just so frustrating, like you said, to not be able to get over the hump and beat the Packers and beat the Vikings. But we have a head coach who doesn't know shit and can no longer call defenses. So there's that. But Caleb and this offense, especially Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet. Oh my God, those guys are amazing. DJ Moore and Keenan Allen are going to get their roses because they've been doing it for years. But Rome Odunze and Cole Kmet, these last few games have looked awesome. And DeAndre Swift and Roschon have looked good too. But Caleb in this offense, like, as long as we bring in the right guy, which Jesus Christ, I hope we do for once, is going to be great next year. It's going to be great. It's just the defense that now needs to be fine-tuned a little bit more.
Yeah. And going against the, Matt LaFleur and
Kevin O'Connell.
Like those are going to be tough. And then tomorrow, of course, you got the Lions, and you got the Lions twice in the next 5 weeks. Yeah. And then you have the Vikings and 49ers sandwiched between them, and then the Packers and Seahawks. Yeah. So like, I think at least by the end of this year, you're going to get your wish, because let's say that Caleb Williams did turn a corner and this is how he's going to play for the rest of the year. I think it's still possible, just due to strength of opponent, if the defense doesn't play at a higher level, that the Bears end up kind of having what's been happening happen. But that means they're going to fire Matt Eberflus, which is what you want. What you don't want to happen is what happened last year, where he looked really good at, the Bears won like 4 of their last 5 or something like that. And then they're like, well, let's ride with him again. You almost want to just rip the Band-Aid off. And if the Bears, with Caleb Williams playing better, just started winning football games, you would find yourself in the exact same situation that you were in last year.
And that's where I struggle, and that's where I don't want to keep being, because that is the same situation right now where I found myself in the last 4 seasons, and it's the worst, because you're like, I was expecting 8 wins, 9 wins, double-digit wins, 10. Even 10, right? And now it's like, well, why should we win? Let's lose more against the NFC North. Let's lose against the NFC West, Seahawks and 49ers, and really, truly have zero zero regrets about letting Eberflus go at the end of this year, because the guy can't win. He can't win challenges. He can't win on Sunday. He can't, all the things I mentioned earlier, he just cannot do. And the only thing I want is for Caleb Williams to continue to throw for 340 yards, 2-3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Rome Odunze to climb up the rookie wide receiver ranks in terms of yards and not necessarily pad stats, but look good their rookie seasons to continue to be optimistic about their careers, and as long as that happens, I don't think I will be super mad about losses. I mean, I'll be mad about losses. You've seen my shorts. You've seen me go crazy on these streams, but at least knowing that Caleb Williams and this offense is humming, knowing that the guys we picked up are doing well, knowing that the offensive line is getting better, knowing that the offensive play calling is getting better, or at least is looking like an NFL offense, scoring points and getting yards. That's really like all we would need, all I would need at least. And I think Bears fans are kind of the same way.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to talk about was Bo Six. The Broncos now, and this is kind of what I've been saying the whole time, where there's times where, especially with a rookie quarterback, you get a good game out of them, and then they come back to earth. Maybe they have a mediocre game, and then a good game again. It's kind of a roller coaster. Whereas I feel feelings that I haven't felt since we had Peyton Manning on the team, and those feelings were on display against the Raiders. The Raiders, they were doing everything to beat us, dude. They pulled out a fake punt, which led to points. They had a kickoff return that went for like 70 yards that led to points. I think both were field goals, but still points. One touchdown, one field goal. And in the last 9 years, I would have been like, we can't overcome. It's not our night. It's just not our night. They're calling the plays. And the whole entire time, I was like, we're going to win. We're going to win this game. Like, we're not going to lose. Like, the Raiders, they're having a good first half, but eventually this team is just going to pull ahead and win. And that's what's happening. And Bo Nix now, I mean, he went into the season with plus 4,000, or it was like plus 8,000 odds to win Rookie of the Year. 2 weeks ago, he was at plus 4,000. Today, he's at plus 125.
There you go.
And I put in this bet in the offseason, not just like because he was the Broncos quarterback. I actually didn't put it in until his first preseason game. And I was like, oh my God, this guy is special. And the first 2 weeks, yeah, they were a little concerning. I was like, I don't really know why he didn't look like that in the preseason.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he started rolling. And
Yep.
now this Denver team, I mean, they have one of the best O-lines, if not the best offensive line right now in the league. If you look at pass protection win rate, they have, or even run blocking win rate, their entire offensive line's in the top 10. Like their offensive line is having a very underrated season. And then Bo Nix just wildly elusive when it comes to feeling pressure, sensing it, and then getting out of it. And then he has speed that I don't think was recruited, properly. Nobody thought Bo Nix was a fast person. They were like, he can make it move when he has to. It's like he ran 21 miles an hour. He was the second fastest ball carrier on the opening weekend against Seattle. So it's like there's just parts of his game where I feel like he's a much more complete quarterback than we were told. They said he didn't have arm strength. He threw a 60-yard pass that went right in the breadbasket. Like they said a lot of things about him that justified him slipping to the second round. If we had a redraft today, there's no way Bo Nix would slip to the second round, and I don't think he would land to 12. I'm not saying that the Bears or Commanders would change their mind on their pick, but I guarantee you the next pick would be Bo Nix. It would not be J.J. McCarthy. Kevin O'Connell would definitely have taken Bo Nix, but the Broncos, I mean, they come off now back-to-back wins. It really should be 3 in a row, but whatever. Block field goal is a block field goal. Yeah. And I feel like if they win that game, people are feeling a lot differently about this team. But even so, what I've noticed is that what I've been saying about the Broncos, I mean, I saw it and I tried to tell everybody about it, and people were like, well, no, and what it is every single week, it's a very slow climb. It's a very, very slow climb for Bo Nix to get these accolades, to be, here he is now, week 13, and people, I mean, you talked about it, 21 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. He hasn't had an interception in like 5 or 6 games now. I mean, he's protecting the football.
Yeah.
He's doing everything right. And more importantly, he's like our guy that's when the play breaks down, you can tell by the body language of the wide receivers if they believe in the quarterback or not. There's times where the play breaks down and the wide receivers just half-heartedly run their route because they're like, he's going to get sacked or he's going to try to run it. These guys know when the play breaks down, like they got to get open because Bo Nix is about to make a play. Like there's just a different energy on the offense, and that defense is really playing special football right now. And I'm looking at the Broncos and I see Monday night they have Cleveland. That should be a tough game. They just beat the Steelers. They beat the Ravens earlier in the year, and then the Colts, and then the Chargers. But if they win their next 3 games, like they're going to have 10 wins with 2 games left in the year. Yeah. And I don't think anybody's going to want to face them. They would definitely probably move to the 6th seed. I think they would jump the Chargers with 3 wins in a row here, and then they would play the Steelers in the first round. And I think the Broncos would beat the Steelers. I really do. I think Bo Nix would play a better game than Russell Wilson, and then whatever happens from there happens from there.
Could you imagine though? That would be a crazy game.
That dude. I mean, the soap operas that would be written about this.
Oh yeah,
it would just be absolutely incredible. But what a time to be alive, and what a time to be a Broncos fan. And I don't feel like I know there was one person when we uploaded our short that was like, even Bronco fans don't have the Broncos in the top 5.
Oh yeah. I do remember that.
And I'm like, but I really do have them in the top 5 because they are one of those teams that you're like, why can't we just fire on all cylinders? They're firing on all cylinders. And what's the really important part to note about Bo Nix is that he's getting better every single week. He's still learning. and improving. Like, we haven't even seen him level out. Like, okay, yeah, I know Nick Wright, he's a Chiefs fan, and he's always like talking shit about the Broncos, but he was like, he's like, oh, no, this is his ceiling. I'm like, how likely is that his ceiling has already hit, and he's playing as well as he is, but he won't get any better? I just don't believe that personally. But what are your thoughts of like what Denver's been able to do up to this point of the season? They were a 5-win projected team. And then what's more impressive to why Bo Nix wins it for me is because Denver was in cap hell. They couldn't make any splashy moves. Everybody ranked the talent on the roster 32nd. They said they have nobody that, besides Patrick Surtain, they have no weapons and they have no star running back. And yet Bo Nix is making it happen with the guys that he has, and he's elevating. Like, all of a sudden, Devon Vele is, a 7th round pick, is starting to look like a serious number 2. And like, that's what the special quarterbacks in the league have done. Like, they remember how many years Tom Brady could just get a Wes Welker or an Amendola or any of these guys and make them good. Like, we're seeing Bo Nix kind of do that. And he's among great company for the numbers he's putting up as a rookie. All of them are Hall of Famers when you look at the other guys that have done it. And I'm just like enjoying the ride. I'm trying not to get too, the Broncos get better, the expectations, and it's hard to just enjoy it when you really are like, well, maybe we could win a playoff game. And it's like, before we just wanted to get in, now we want to win. And what do you think about like the Broncos and Bo Nix, from somebody that's not a Broncos fan? What do they need to do for you to put them in their top 5? Because they lost 2 in a row to open the year, but really since that point, they have 2 losses in the span of, however many games that has been. That's 2 losses in 12 games, or 11 games. That's pretty good. And it seems like their best ball is still being played. It's still in front of them.
So the Broncos to me are very like people, and we all do this. NFL media, podcasters, everyone does this. So look at what happened last year and apply it to the following year. Now, you're right. A lot of people looked at the cap. They looked at Jerry Jeudy being traded. They looked at Sean Payton and the draft. Oh, bringing in Bo Nix, the last quarterback to be selected in the first round that you could have gotten in the second round. A lot of criticism and a lot of people saying, like, you had mentioned, they're a 5-win team at best, apparently, right? Preseason. They're 32nd in talent. They're this. They're not good. They're blah, 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 blah. Podcasts that I listen to are like, Courtland Sutton is a really underappreciated wide receiver 1. And while league-wide, when you look at number 1 wide receivers, that is true. You and I have watched enough Broncos games, at least over the last couple of years since we've started this podcast, to know that Courtland Sutton is a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. We saw what he did last year with Russ, and really the last couple of years with Russ, where he got to have amazing body control to catch the touchdowns and the passes from Russ that he did. We saw how Russell Wilson was just not the guy for Sean Payton, and how Sean Payton kind of came into the Broncos and was like, you got your own office, you got your own trainer? No, we don't do that. We don't do that shit around here, right? So a lot of that drama, a lot of let's cut Russ and save the money, right? All of that just spilled into this season. Now, I will say, I wasn't a person who was looking at the Broncos roster and being like, yeah, this is a playoff roster. No, I mean, Courtland Sutton, yeah, 100%. Some like what's the guy's name?
Surtain,
100%. The other guy on the defense, Benito, but
oh yeah, he's the sack. He's second in being the sack leader of the NFL right now.
That guy I knew was really good.
Zach Allen is the best defensive lineman in the league right now.
Exactly. And like a couple of these guys, just from watching Broncos games with you and hearing you talk about it, I was like, they've got some guys. Now, do they have enough as a unit to be the best? Probably not. And, I'll put my hand up. I thought so too. I was like, in terms of talent on the roster, I don't think they're better than half the league or maybe like 12 teams, but you are seeing the belief and the coaching that goes into successful franchises, and successful coaches do this. Sean Payton is a successful coach. He's won one Super Bowl. He had many winning seasons with the guys that he would coach up, with the right staff, with the right mentality, game planning, all of that stuff that the Bears clearly don't have, and other franchises that clearly don't have that, is what Sean Payton, your Andy Reids, your Mike Tomlins, your Harbaughs, they've got that. And the Broncos are lucky to have gone through the bullshit last year with Russ Wilson, gone through a full offseason with Sean Payton, and he's been like, I've assessed everyone by picking, obviously, the Bo Nix and the rest of the draftees, but also going through the roster and him being like, I am comfortable and I know these guys can do it. He said that preseason. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it preseason. And all of that, everyone else took it and said, no way. And this is the fruits of their labor.
They thought Sean was washed.
They thought Sean was washed. And a lot of people, I mean, sure, maybe you would think that after being away from coaching for a couple of years or for however long he was away, maybe I don't think that's an outlandish statement, but to say washed is a little crazy. To be like, maybe he's out of it for a bit. Yeah, I could see that. But again, you're seeing the fruits of his labor in terms of what he did with his roster, the decisions he made by cutting Russ and trading away Jerry Jeudy, and the financial somewhat disaster that came with that. But now you're seeing how many wins do they have? 7, 8?
Yeah. No, they have
7. Right? 7. Now you're seeing that they took a roster that everyone across the NFL media said is 32nd best in the league minus Surtain, and they're a top 10 team. And they did that with the last quarterback taken in the first round, with a guy, Courtland Sutton, who a lot of people were like, yeah, he's looking like a wide receiver 1. He's always been a wide receiver 1. He always has been. They're doing it with a roster that everybody hated, and they're doing it with a coach that everybody said was washed, and a defensive coordinator who last year was like looking kind of shaky. And this defense is just doing amazing things, and they've been toe-to-toe with Kansas City. They've beaten the Raiders. They've gone toe-to-toe with other teams, the Chargers, right? And they've had some unlucky stuff go their way. Beat the
in
Bucs.
Tampa.
Destroyed the Bucs. They didn't just beat the Bucs. They destroyed the Bucs.
Destroyed the Bucs. Absolutely. And they destroyed the Panthers.
So I'm seeing a lot of and again, this is what we all do. A lot of stuff from last year spilling into predictions and assessments going into this year, and those assessments and predictions being absolutely demolished by Sean Payton, who told you in the preseason, our roster's pretty good. And
if people just watched preseason, they would have known, because I don't know, unless I've missed my calling and I should be an NFL scout. Like, it was so obvious watching him spread the ball around to every receiver, scoring a touchdown on 5 straight drives, and then getting pulled out of the game. It's like, what, you thought that was a fluke? Like, we've never had anybody do that since know who. Yep. But look at this. This is not one of those fluky statistics, right? Quarterbacks in the last 10 years, quarterbacks with 20-plus total touchdowns and 2 or fewer turnovers in a 10-game span, which is really when Bo Nix started getting better at, the first 2 weeks were growing pains. Mm-hmm. But the last 10 games, only quarterbacks in the last 10 years with 20 or more total touchdowns with 2 or less picks. Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and now Bo Nix.
There you go.
And that is great company. Great company. He is protecting the football. Mm-hmm. If you win the turnover battle, that's the thing. He's giving our team a chance to win, and he's not doing anything to lose the game. And he's also not just managing it either. Like he's actually making like 3rd and long is no longer we're gonna definitely punt. You actually think he's gonna convert. How many 3rd and 13s he converted last week? I can't even tell you.
And that was one of the things that I had said a couple weeks ago. I forget how many episodes ago was Bo Nix had the absolute rookie season so far through 12 weeks where he looked bad. And then it was like week after week after week after week, it just got better. And it has gotten so good that his offensive rookie of the year chances are higher. People are saying, damn, he could be the offensive rookie of the year. And also, we were wrong. This is what happens, man. And Bo Nix has done nothing but just take what Sean Payne has said and applied it in every sense of the word. Because yes, he started off rough. We were talking about Jane Daniels and being like, yeah, he's the offensive rookie of the year. There's no question. Jane Daniels is taking a dip. Caleb Williams is on the up and up after taking a massive dip. And Bo Nix has just been up. He's just been up. So unless there is a complete fall off the cliff moment or an injury to Bo Nix, and Jane Daniels and Caleb Williams somehow skyrocket in terms of yards, in terms of wins, in terms of this, in terms of that, it's going to go to Bo Nix. And there's no wide receiver. Malik Neighbors is struggling from not having a quarterback. He's the only other offensive rookie of the year that I would probably put in a conversation. Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't look as good. It's Bo Nix or Jane Daniels at this point. And again, it's going to take a fall off a cliff for Bo Nix to not win it.
All right. Well, Thanksgiving. Lil Lee, what's up, buddy? All right. So Thanksgiving football is upon us. We are going to break down those games, and we're going to start with the first game, and that's going to be the Bears going to Detroit. Dan Campbell said today it's really important to get the win in this game because you're spending time with your family after the game, and no one wants to be around you after a loss, which is just like I really appreciated that because I'm like, it's something I've always thought, but nobody's ever said. But yeah, I mean, of course. And why would he know that? Well, the Packers beat him last year on Thanksgiving.
They've been beaten on Thanksgiving so many times.
Yeah. And now, this is a different type of team. All right. This is a Lions team that is the best team in the NFL. The Bears, they've been playing good football on the offensive side. I think this is a great opportunity for the nation to see Caleb Williams on a nationally televised stage going against the best team in the NFL and kind of see where he measures up and where the Bears measure up. I think the spread was at like 10.5. And I don't really know. I'm at that point where it's like, I know that the Lions 10.5 is like nothing. I mean, they beat teams by like 35, and I've taken those lofty spreads plus 13.5. No way. I did that with the Jaguars, and then they were beat like 55-10. And this to me is just one of those where like, I don't feel comfortable taking the Bears plus 10.5. I also would not be shocked if the Bears make this a close game, just being a divisional game and Caleb Williams playing good ball. And anytime you're this good, the Lions, the same thing happens with the Chiefs. That's why the Panthers played so well. You have a huge target on your back. It's their Super Bowl. It's everybody's Super Bowl when they play you, and you're going to get their best shot. But Detroit, to me, is just too good of a defense. I just don't see a way that the Bears are going to be able to go into Detroit and upset the Lions with the vibes the way they are right now.
Detroit is too good of a team. Detroit is the best team in the NFC, and if it's not them, it's the Eagles, but they are neck and neck right now. And Look, at the end of the day, I'm going to pick the Bears to win. Let's be real, right? I'm a Bears fan. Don't know if you guys can tell, but I'm a Bears fan, and I want them to win. I want them to play spoiler on Thanksgiving for the Lions. The thing is, the defense is nowhere near as good as it has been prior to that Commanders game, and even some of the that last half of last season. It's nowhere near as good. Jalen Johnson is getting touchdowns thrown on him. Tyreek Stevenson has been someone who has pretty much been a ghost and has not played very well since fucking up against the Commanders in that Week 8 game. A lot of the secondary is kind of beat up. Jaquan Brisker is still out he's on the IR currently, our safety. Tremaine Edmonds and Edwards have played okay, but we can't stop the run, and they can pass on us. That's what I've noticed from the Bears defense. So the Bears defense is no good. The only way the Bears can win this game is if they outshoot the Lions and Jared Goff. Now, I don't know Jared Goff's record against the Bears. Jared Goff record versus Bears, because this was something I was actually going to look up. He's 5-4, so he actually has a lot of trouble against the Bears. And with Eberflus, it really hasn't been an issue because they're 2-11 against the NFC North, 2-12. So,
well, the last two games are really the only ones that matter because the last year the Lions were good, and then the years before that, I mean, they weren't.
Yeah, but they were on the up and up 2 years ago prior to last season.
Towards the end of the season, they started getting good.
Yeah, and it doesn't even really matter with Eberflus because I don't think he has a win against the Lions. And if he does, he's got one. One of the two wins is against the Lions. So he struggles against the Bears in general, and the Lions with Justin Fields struggled against the Bears as well. Gave up a lot of yards, and this was Justin Fields. Obviously, we haven't played them yet this year with Caleb, but the Lions have struggled against the Bears. Plain and simple. But this year, it's just the Lions are just a much better team. The Bears can't stop the runs to save their lives. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are going to have a game against this Bears run defense. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Hawkinson, not Hawkinson. What's his name? The tight end.
TJ Hawkinson, or no, Sam Laporta.
Sam Laporta, yes. All these guys are going to have games against the Bears defense. And that's just what it is, man. So the only way the Bears can win this game is if they get in a shootout. Caleb Williams somehow has 350, 400 yards, close to that, and 3-4 touchdowns. Because you said it, this Lions defense is so damn good. DeAndre Swift is not going to be able to do much. They can barely run the ball with DeAndre Swift in most games this season as it is. The offensive line has looked a little bit better. The scheme on the offensive side with Thomas Brown has looked better. I'm going to pick the Bears to win, to spoil, because I want them to play spoiler. But I have a very, very good feeling that the Lions are going to take this win, no matter what. So I'm a Bears fan. I want to beat the NFC North, and I want to be able to beat the Lions to where they don't have that first round bye and they look even, have to play an extra game. But the Lions are just so damn good that they're probably going to win. But I'm still going to ride with my Bears, baby. Bear down.
Yeah, and the Bears, like you said, lately they've been struggling to stop the run. They've allowed 4.8 yards per carry. Now that's kind of bad because the Lions,
it's terrible.
They've ran for at least 105 yards in every game. And over the past 5 games, the Bears have allowed an average of 151 yards on the ground.
It's just a recipe for disaster.
I guess The one thing is that David Montgomery, he left with a shoulder injury. But after the game, they were all optimistic that he's going to be able to play. But maybe they're only going to partially play him. I'm not sure. I have him on my fantasy team, so I'm really invested in figuring that out. But David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game.
It's what's so funny is that I was reading a Bears blog and it was like, oh, David Montgomery's going to have his revenge game against the Bears. And I'm like, 1, he's already had it. 2, we already know how good they are. Like, there's no revenge game. He's already had his revenge game against the Bears. He's going to play really well against the Bears because they can't stop the run worth of shit. But he's already had his revenge
that's what
game.
he is focused on. He's got
Yeah.
he's on a Super Bowl run, and he's just like still mad about the Bears. Like,
Damn it.
get real.
They're focused on the playoffs right now. They're focused on the playoffs. Maybe that works in our favor too. Is they're in a sense looking ahead. Although Dan Campbell does not strike me as the person to look ahead.
Same here.
It's the obstacle in front of you. Destroy that obstacle, and let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, and maybe for the first game, it was a revenge game. But at this point, it's like, what, are we going to do this every year? Like,
every single time? Like, no.
Eventually, it's just your ex. You know, it doesn't mean anything.
Oh yeah, she's cool.
There's a couple of these games that are like, ooh, and there's a couple that are like, this is an ooh. The New York Giants at Dallas Cowboys
is bad.
I gotta say, for all the scrutiny that Mike McCarthy has been under, I think he's a good coach. I think he might be a great coach.
Wow.
I think
hot take.
Yeah, I think he's a really good coach. I think the Cowboys just haven't done the fact that Jerry Jones is still making personnel decisions on draft day is just could you imagine working like that? Like having a job to make a team better, but there's this old guy that is telling you who to pick and you have to listen to him because he's the owner. It's like, I can't work like this.
No
I
way.
need to have the creative freedom to build my team.
Yeah.
And he's not really given that. And then you get a roster that really had no answers. They didn't go all in. And then as soon as Dak gets hurt, you see how good Dak is and how valuable he is to this team.
Yep.
Cooper Rush he played better last week, but he's not, the answer by any means. And it's not like if Cooper Rush came in and things were just going great, it would be like, yeah, Dak is just not it. And it's like, that's not what you're getting out of Cooper Rush. But yet the Dallas Cowboys went on the road into Washington and beat Jaden Daniels. And that is coaching. The fact that this team has nothing to play for, and they were able to get that type of a gritty win where they had an explosive on the special teams, where I'm sure you've seen that video 100 times with Turpin's spin move.
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
and the Cowboys got it done. That was a really tough game. The Giants, on the other hand, which I would love to just take a second and bash them, because the Giants are proving to everybody why they're not a legitimate organization and why nobody is going to want to go there. There's no free agents that are like, oh yeah, this is where I want to go. I want to be a Giant. Why? Because the Giants don't even want to win themselves. They want to tell Drew Lock all season long that he's the number 2, just so they can elevate Tommy DeVito. Like, it makes no sense at all. Like, Drew Lock is at least a former second-round pick who was, a victim of Vic Fangio being the head coach. Yeah. And then he went to Seattle. He tried to get the starting job. Geno Smith was a shocker to all of us. And how did he handle it? He had a good attitude. He was always supportive. He when he was asked to come into a game, he threw a touchdown pass with like 30 seconds left against the Eagles on Monday Night Football and won the game. And then Geno was healthy and we didn't see him again. I'm not saying Drew Lock is going to be a franchise quarterback. I'm saying Drew Lock deserves the chance to go out there and prove that he can maybe lead a team. He deserves the opportunity. He's done everything right. He hasn't made any noise. He has always been supportive. He has an extremely gifted arm. And who knows how much knowledge he's absorbed just sitting on the bench. This is what Jordan Love, look at how he looked the first time we saw him play during the COVID year. He looked terrible. Then he came in a year, 2 years later for Aaron Rodgers against the Eagles. And maybe it's just the Eagles. So it seems like quarterbacks that come in against the Eagles just play really good.
Yeah.
He lit it up, and you could see that experience actually paid off for him. I'm curious to know what Drew Lock's experience at this point looks like in an NFL game. Not one where he comes in the middle of the game, but one that he's like game plan for all week, knowing that he's the guy. And then he goes out there from the beginning of the game all the way to the end of the game. I want to see what he looks like. And the fact that they're going with Tommy DeVito just tells me that the Giants aren't taking this serious enough, because they have an opportunity to maybe tap in to something here. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But what do you have to lose? Is Tommy DeVito going to be the franchise quarterback for the Giants or not? If the answer is no, then stop it and see what you have over here. And then if that doesn't work out, go back to Tommy DeVito. I get it. Like, you want to sell seats and all of that. But you know what you should be trying to do? You should be trying to figure out if the guy on your roster actually has something to him. And I think this would be a great opportunity for him to start. On Thanksgiving, the whole nation would see it. It would have been huge for him if he wanted to get a deal somewhere else, if he played good. But the Giants are going with Tommy DeVito. He was terrible. We knew that he wasn't going to be good. He didn't have a good game. And they still wouldn't put Drew Lock in the game. It's like they doubled down on their decision. They were like, no, we can't do that because then we'll look wrong. It's like, you do look wrong. You know, the great organizations know how to pivot from bad mistakes and do it quickly. The Giants are triple downing on it because he's going to start in this game as well. I don't understand what they're doing, and it actually does make me mad because Drew Lock said himself in the locker room, they told me I was the number 2. They told me that. And all of a sudden now I'm not. That's just dishonest from Brian Daboll all the way up and all the way down. You shouldn't lie to your players and give them false hope of being, one quarterback away from entering the game just for that opportunity to happen and you to change your mind. It's fucked up.
Yeah, and he gives them the better chance to win, if we're being honest, right? Like, DeVito is going to bring in the memes. It's going to bring in the this. It may put some more asses in the seats, but they're tanking. We know the Giants are more than likely tanking. The thing is, like, you don't want to get Malik Neighbors a little bit happier. We saw what his comments were to the media. It's like, hey, ask Daboll. It's not a quarterback problem. That's very clear. It wasn't Daniel Jones's fault. Everybody loved Daniel Jones in terms of players. And really, at the end of the day, it's probably like, well, you're supposed to. That's your guy. You're in the locker room with him. It's like you're supposed to look out for your buddy, right? But at the end of the day, you're going to lose regardless. It's just, how do you want to do it? Do you want to do it with Tommy Cutlets or do you want to do it with Drew Lock? Which way do you want to go about it? They're going at it the worst way because, like you said, and like Drew Lock was promised, you're number 2. Oh, but now that we cut Daniel Jones, actually we're going to put Tommy Cutlets at number 1 and you're going to be still the backup. And it's like, this is where, like, as a Bears fan, I'm like, okay, maybe there's some organizations that just do things way worse. And I'm looking at the Giants to be the ones that are looking a little bit worse, at least in this situation right now, because again, you talk to all these players and they say the same thing. It wasn't a quarterback problem. We lost the same way. So I don't know what Daboll and this Giants organization is doing. I still think Daboll is a good coach. I don't know what's going to happen. On the other side with the Cowboys, this is kind of a similar situation. I think we talked about it maybe like a last week or a couple weeks ago, is like, you traded for Trey Lance. You gave up a 4th round pick and you don't want to throw him in there to kind of see what you got with Trey Lance. He's still a young guy. You don't want to see what you got with him versus Cooper Rush. Like, the whole Jerry Jones making personnel decisions, dumb as hell, because he has clearly not made a good decision in a very, very long time. The only good decision he's made was to draft CeeDee Lamb, I feel like, and Micah Parsons. Those have been his best decisions. But they're kind of in the same situation in terms of, like, you don't want to see what you got in this guy right now? Why? Yes, for the Giants, Tommy DeVito is an undrafted rookie that won a couple games and did some good things for you last year. But Drew Lock was winning games in crunch time for the Seahawks last year. The Seahawks, when Geno Smith was doing really well, and then he got injured, and then he brought in Drew Lock, and he's putting on the fucking backpack. He's putting the team on his back. You don't want that. You don't want to see what Trey Lance has after you give up a 4th round pick. This is just terribly managed teams, where the coaches are actually pretty decent. I don't know if Mike McCarthy is like one of the, what did you say? Like he's actually an excellent coach or something. I don't know about that. He has called nothing but great offense, especially last year after he took play calling duties. But I don't know, man. It's just the organization right now for those two teams looks really bad in terms of decision making and how they're going about those decisions, especially when you got players talking mad shit about the decisions that are being made. In terms of who I'm picking, Cowboys. I gotta go Cowboys. They're at home. Tommy Cutlets ain't gonna do it, but I don't know. I guess I gotta go home team. That's kind of the decision I'm going with.
Yeah, and the Giants, like the one strength that you could say it was their rushing defense.
Yeah,
and
that line was amazing.
in their last 3 games, though, they're 30th.
Oof.
Or 28th. They've given up 164 rushing yards per game. So look at Turpin to hit the over. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough game to predict because it's 2 bad teams, but I feel confident that Dallas is going to win because I think Dallas is going to, I think Mike McCarthy is definitely the better coach. I like Dable, but I mean, it's funny. People have strong opinions on McCarthy, but he is a guy that led the Cowboys to 12 wins in a season, like 3 years in a row. The Packers were good like his entire time he was there, besides 1 year, and they fired him. He won a Super Bowl. It's very similar to Sean Payton, only 1 Super Bowl, but still, how many coaches don't have one?
I'm taking Sean Payton over McCarthy any day.
I am too, but it's interesting why.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like it's interesting.
Something about the attitude that each one of them brings.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Payton wears Jordans. He's the first coach to be sponsored by Jordan. Like the vibes are just kind of like fuck you. Like we're like he comes from Bill Parcells. Mike McCarthy just like I feel like he's not as likable.
That's a big one. But Sean Payton, I don't think is like likable off the start. I think you grow to like him because of how passionate he is about what he does in football. Mike McCarthy comes off as a guy who isn't very passionate about football, but is a good
nose up.
Yeah. And Sean Payton is like, yeah, he's probably rough around the edges, especially the way he talked about Russ last year, but also like
choose out his players on the sideline. But I like that. Like as a fan, I want to see my coach give a shit.
And you got to respect it because he does give a shit and he shows it day in, day out.
Well, the next game is the not the ooh. So this is the Dolphins at Green Bay in Lambeau. We had this same game. My family was at it in Miami on Christmas. I think it was 2 years ago. And the Packers ended up winning that game. And it was a good game. I remember the Dolphins had a chance to drive down and win at the end. And Jair Alexander got the game-winning pick. And I think he took it all the way back to the house, gave the football to a fan wearing a Jair Alexander jersey, and then had an epic post-game interview with the reporter where he was like, I was like, huh? And I took that back, gave it to a fan wearing number 27, and then Merry Christmas, and stuff like that. Like, just like so much personality.
That's good.
What's different this time is that the game's in Lambeau. All right. So the first thing people are going to talk about is the temperature, because it's that time of the year. Buffalo is going to have some snow this weekend. It's going to be in the 20s. The winds could be up to 20 miles per hour and perhaps some flurries. So we're going to get Lambeau weather. I mean, here we are. So, okay. 1 point goes to the Packers, obviously. Now the Dolphins, they're on a 3-game winning streak, and they just had their best game last week. This whole offense, and I remember saying, I'm like, I don't know if it was with you or just streaming on Sunday Night Football, but I was like, you look at the Dolphins, and it's like they got Tua back, they have Jalen Waddle, they have Tyreek, and still it's like there's something missing, and it's weird. Like, I don't know what it is, and I felt that way about the Rams at times. They got Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp and Stafford. Why isn't it working? But the Dolphins finally had that game where you could honestly be like, yeah, that's the Dolphins. There they are. That's their first game of the season that they actually put on the field what we thought they were going to be this year. Yeah. I had dropped Jalen Waddle in fantasy because I held on to him. And I was like, this is the week. And eventually I was like, he's burning a roster spot. And Matthew Berry, the ESPN guy, was like, it's okay to drop Waddle.
And then he had 28 points.
Okay. And he has 28 points. And I'm like, how is it always that way? I pick up a kicker that's never missed. He misses 2 in a row. Like, I just...
Deontay Johnson?
You got to love it. You got to love it. Like, all you can do is laugh sometimes.
Yeah.
But... yeah, they had one of those games where chemistry between Jalen Waddle finally appeared, and the Dolphins are 2 games behind the Broncos. So make no mistake about it, the only way the Dolphins, and they're the only team that is actually in the hunt. Now, I will say the Colts have the easiest remaining schedule that you will see in the NFL. Like, they should win every one of those games. There is not one tough game on the schedule. The Dolphins, this is their last tough game on the schedule. So this is what, if you're a Broncos fan or any team holding the 7th seed, you're like, we need Green Bay to beat them, because it's very possible that the Dolphins, this is their last loss of the year if they lose. And if they do lose this one, perhaps that is just too much to overcome, and they will officially be too far away from Denver, where if Denver wins against the Browns, they would have a 3-game lead with only 5 games left. That is looking like a lock. I think they would have like an 86% chance of making it if that happened. Now, the Dolphins, though, easy schedule after this. So this is their last game. This is a playoff game for the Dolphins, which I think you're going to get that intensity. I think you're going to get that type of a team to come out there. And that just alone makes me want to entertain the Dolphins getting the win.
Yeah.
But it's Lambeau Field. Rick, it's Thanksgiving.
In November.
It's 20 degrees.
Yep.
The wind is 20 miles an hour.
Yep.
There's one team that is built for this, and there's a team that is built for Miami Beach. And I'm sorry, but Tua has never beaten a playoff team in a cold weather game. Never. It's never happened.
Wow.
He's had one game against Buffalo where they went back and forth, but the Bills ultimately won. I remember that game. It was snowing. I think that was our first year doing the podcast, but I have no reason, because what, they beat New England last week? Like, all of a sudden I'm going to be like, yeah, they can go into Lambeau and get the job done. They beat New England. Yeah. I don't think it's going to be a cakewalk. I'm talking like a 3-point, 4-point win. But I'm gonna go ahead and go with the team that I think is going to be built for this. I think Josh Jacobs has a big game. Yeah. I think the defense for Green Bay is made for this. I like their chances, but it is a coaching tree matchup. Matt LaFleur and Mike McDaniels, they know a lot about each other. The weather is my X factor in this.
I like it. It's hard to disagree, especially with what we've seen from the Dolphins, especially with Tua and Mike McDaniels against cold weather teams going into a cold weather environment. If this was in Miami, maybe it's a little different because you mentioned Josh Jacobs, and that is a huge factor in this game. And what they're able to do with him, and you know, you said you mentioned them at the top of the stream was like, what's their team? What's the team that he came from looking like? It's like they got rid of a guy who's in the top 3 in rushing yards right now. And he's just doing extremely well. And on top of that, you bring in, you put in Jordan Love, you put in the Packers defense at home. It's a tough sell for Miami Dolphins fans, I think, to go into this game and be optimistic about it. Which is why I'm taking the Dolphins to beat the Packers. They're going to get their first win. And look, I hate the Packers. What do you want from me? I remember I think it was the first year where Kyle was like, you don't want the best player in Aaron Rodgers back when he was on the Packers to go into the playoffs. And in my head, I was like, absolutely not. I want nothing more than the Packers to always lose. And obviously, you know, your family are all Green Bay Packers fans, and they've seen my meltdown against the Packers earlier this year in week 11. But I don't know, man. It's obviously going to be cold weather. It's Mike McDaniel versus LaFleur. I don't know. I just feel like this is one of those. It's clearly going to be the Packers type of conversations, and they're going to flip it. And it's going to be the Dolphins that come out with the win. We talked about Jalen Waddle. I think he might actually be the X factor in this game. I think it's going to be Jalen Waddle and it's going to be Josh Jacobs that are going to be the biggest offensive contributors on this team. The defense
no
is
Achane?
Well, maybe Achane, I think he
He's like
had a really good week.
Part of their offense this year. That's actually the reason that I wasn't getting production out of Waddle, was because he was like, as a receiver, he was playing such a huge role, not just as a running back. Like he's being used, 7 targets a game type of stuff.
Yeah, and he had a really good week last week. I mean, he was running the ball effectively. They were getting the ball to him through the air. They've got so many weapons, and I know Jordan Love is going to throw a game-sealing interception because that's what Jordan Love does. He throws interceptions. I think he threw one against the Bears. I don't know what he did last week, or did they have the bye week? I can't remember exactly, but
the Packers might be the most. You got the Lions, of course, but arguably the Packers are like one of the most balanced teams in the NFL. They are 3rd in the league in rushing yards per game, with 151 rushing yards per game. And then in passing yards per game, they're also 10. So it's kind of weird because a lot of times when you have a team that's really high in rushing, their passing is like 16, 17, 18. But the Packers they got 230 passing yards per game, right behind Minnesota. Detroit's definitely the most balanced team in the league. But
absolutely,
that to me is an interesting thing to track, because as much as like Matt LaFleur is a great offensive coordinator, one thing we know about him is he loves the running game. He's not like one of these guys that just wants to put the ball in Jordan Love's hands 40 times. Like he wants to run the football and have a very balanced approach. And I'm interested to see what's the Dolphins' approach going to be. How are the Dolphins going to do in this game? Because the Dolphins right now are 19th in passing yards per game. But who cares? I mean, they didn't have Tua, so let's just look at their last 3.
Yeah, for a good chunk of games, they did not have Tua there.
They're 8th in their last 3. They're averaging 250 passing yards per game in their last 3. That's 20 more than the Packers. Now, how are they running the football? Well, in their last 3, Miami is they're 29th.
Oh,
they have
pretty much.
They have 6 71 rushing yards in their last 3, which is interesting because I'm wondering if the unbalanced approach of Miami is going to come back to haunt them. If they need Tua to throw the ball 35, 40 times, if
50
that's not the
times.
recipe to get this dub.
Yeah, because and again, we know the Packers defense is definitely up there. But if you make it a one-dimensional Tua throwing the ball to Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, I mean, pin your ears back and get after Tua. That's the kind of defense you're going to call. And if Haley continues to do what he's been doing all season, they're going to get to Tua. They're going to get to Tua, and that's going to affect the entire game. Not only the weather, but the defense as well can just pin their ears back, put pressure on Tua. For some reason, it's the Packers. The Dolphins are coming off a really good game last week. I think that momentum is going to carry into this week into Lambeau. And I think the Dolphins are going to take the dub.
All right, and then we got Black Friday football. We had this last year, and I remembered the game because I was streaming it. It was the Jets and the Dolphins, and I think the Dolphins were up like 35-0 or something crazy.
Holy shit!
It was like just such a disappointing game. I think, if I recall, I think there was a Hail Mary to close out the half. And somehow that was completed for a touchdown. It was just one of those. Oh, no. They tried a Hail Mary, and I think it was a pick 6.
Mm-hmm.
It was like just one of those days. So here we go. I think this is the second edition ever of Black Friday football. And you got the Raiders going to Kansas City. There's really not much to talk about in this game.
No.
Gardner Minshew broke his collarbone against the Broncos last week. Aiden O'Connell is going to be the quarterback. I don't know if that's a good luck charm. 11 months ago, Aiden O'Connell did go into Arrowhead on Christmas Day and beat the Chiefs. So it's not like he doesn't feel like he can get the win. That a lot of the game is mental. So that's definitely a point for the Raiders. But they don't have a run game. They don't have Josh Jacobs. The Chiefs are going to play we kind of know what we're going to get. Now, we talked about the Panthers game. Like, could this be another one of those games where the Chiefs just kind of keep it close and then kick a game-winning field goal at the end? Totally. Will people feel like the Chiefs are a bad team because of it? No. They're going to be like they're 11-1. Yeah. This is a game for the Chiefs to flex their muscles and actually say like, no, we're kind of turning that switch on early and start taking advantage of Panthers and Raiders and those type of teams that are on the schedule. It's not good for the Chiefs mental to be playing this type of football against these type of teams right before the playoffs start. I feel like I'm having deja vu even talking about this right now. But you got the potential return of Isaiah Pacheco, who's been out since week 2 with a broken leg. The Chiefs ran for 165 yards against Carolina, but 60 of those came from Mahomes. So with Pacheco out, the Chiefs have had to find new ways to generate first downs. They can still do it through the air. Travis Kelce, who, people are saying he's kind of having a down year. He is. But the other tight end, blanking on, is it Gray? I think Gray.
No, yeah.
I think he had 2 touchdowns in the first half.
He's becoming Mahomes' favorite target.
Yeah, which is a shocker.
Yeah.
We'll see if that stands in the postseason. Their whole relationship just hasn't really been what it has been this entire season. Now, I don't know if that's part of the problems that the Chiefs are having, but it's hard to really say they have any problems when they only have 1 loss. So I'm going to go with Kansas City at home to beat a Raiders team that only has 2 wins on the season. But it's the Raiders. It's Black Friday. Like, spooky, weird things. I have this game I have on upset alert. I'll put it that way.
Oh,
The
okay.
Chiefs they should be on upset alert. They should remember what happened on Christmas last year. And
Mhm.
absolutely, it could happen again with the way the Chiefs are playing. Aiden O'Connell making the most of his new opportunity again to be the quarterback.
No,
Why not?
not Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ritter.
Or Desmond Ritter, who
Yeah.
you said was going to win a game.
Yeah.
You called it. Maybe
he-
this is the game.
And he looked so bad last week when he came in to relieve.
He looks so fast. I couldn't believe it. Like, you know how you just get used to it? Reminds me of when I went to the combine. I'm watching 40-yard dashes, and like the first like 20 guys that run it, you got the big board and you look up and you're like 4.4, 4.5, 4.7. But after like 20 or 30, you don't even have to look at the board. You're like, you see, oh, that was fast. That was and then you look up, it's a 4.3. Like, you kind of get a feel for it. My eyes got used to Gardner Minshew. And when Riddler came into the game, I forgot. I'm like, he is fast. And I looked it up.
Fast, yeah.
And he was clocked at 21 miles an hour last year with the Falcons. He's a very fast quarterback.
Mhm.
So maybe he's able to, I mean, if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you got to be able to do weird stuff like extend plays and lay it all out on the line and have a couple 15, 17, pick up a first down on 3rd and 13.
Yep.
And maybe he can have one of those games because he is a dual threat quarterback, although not so threatening, but I am saying he can run it as well.
Yeah, he's a fast dude, and we saw what he did with Atlanta last year. And yeah, I had called it a couple weeks ago where he came in and he was talking about how grateful he was for the opportunity to just be back in a role where he has the opportunity to start, or like, just being on an NFL team in general, right? Like at the absolute minimum, he's on a team, and he was crying, he was getting very emotional, and I was like, good for him. But then he came in for Gardner Minshew, and I was like, that's why he's no longer a quarterback in the league, because he looked bad passing the ball. Was he fast? Yeah. Is he going to be able to pick up a couple first downs, maybe even get a touchdown with his legs? Hopefully he's able to kind of feel that rush of getting into the end zone, whether it's through the air or through the on his own legs, right? This is an easy one for me. It's the Chiefs, man. And if Isaiah Pacheco is coming back, especially, yeah, 100%. The Atlanta Falcons have been doing zero on defense in terms of pressure, really in terms of anything. And Mahomes,
The Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, or I'm sorry, the Atlanta Falcons. I don't know why. I was thinking Desmond Ritter for some reason.
I was like, man, this analogy's running deep.
Back on the Falcons. The Chiefs against the Raiders, man. The Raiders have been doing nothing. I don't know about you, but have you heard Christian Wilkins' name at all this year?
No, well, you're talking about the guy they drafted in the first round.
No, the defensive tackle they got in to kind of help out Max Crosby from Miami.
No, I haven't, but I have heard, the guy that they drafted out of Clemson in the first round that everybody was like, that was such a reach. I think they drafted him at like 9 overall.
Let me see.
Raiders 22 draft. So first round they didn't have. So it was 2023 then. Tyree Wilson.
Yeah.
Tyree Wilson is starting to come into form. And then they also have, I was watching like the Bo Nix film breakdown, and one of the guys it was funny. There's a guy that works for the radio station for Denver, and they're like, it's like any opportunity he gets to shit on Bo Nix, he's just like so excited to do it. And I'm like, it's so strange. And he was like, oh, the batted balls are starting to become a concern. Dude, the guy that bat down the balls 6'7". He is
he's a basketball player,
defensive end in the league. And it's like, yeah, he was batting down balls. He's 6'7". I mean, imagine the wingspan when you add that with the height. Like, you got to throw a ball really high to hit those checkdowns. It's kind of ridiculous. So the Raiders have that guy. I'm blanking on his name right now, but they have him. Tyree Wilson starting to play a little bit better.
Max Crosby's always going to be a problem.
Crosby's always going to be a problem. Like they have some pieces. It's just their secondary is just not good enough.
I was going to say this might be the best offensive game for the Chiefs this year. Week 13 against the Raiders. This might be their best offensive game. Best complete offensive game. They had a scare last week against Carolina, but this might be their best one, where you look at it and you're like, okay, this is the Chiefs we know. This is the playoff Chiefs who don't lose, and Mahomes is going to do something crazy. I just have a very difficult time seeing them lose against the Raiders. I mean, I had a very difficult time seeing them lose against the Panthers, and they almost did. I mean, it was a very close game, right? So I can't see that against the Raiders for some reason. They're always it's a divisional matchup. We always talk about how divisional matchups are always weird, and probably the more feistier kind of wild card type of matchups. But Max Crosby is going to do his thing. He's going to annoy Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes is going to take that and do what he does best, and that's win the game. I just think that the Chiefs are going to be able to win the game. You said it yourself. The Raiders have no run game. They got rid of Josh Jacobs. They brought in Alexander Madison, and they had in, was it Zamir White or something like that?
Yeah, and they got a new running back now that made his first start, and he looked pretty good. I'm blanking on his name. It's nobody we've ever heard of.
Let's see,
so that's where they're at.
Amir
the other thing too about Riddler is, everybody, a lot of quarterbacks look bad against the Broncos. Yeah. Let's just be real. The Riddler kind of got a shit deal coming into that game. Mm-hmm. That's a bad spot. They were down like 2 possessions, and you're throwing him in the game with Surtain and no real prep. He just got there. But the running back for the Raiders that I was thinking of is McCormick.
I thought you meant Amir Abdullah.
Yeah, it's this McCormick. He was there's nothing really that pops out. He ran a 4.640 at the 2022 combine. I think he had like a start at one point in his career, and he like fumbled the ball, and then he hasn't gotten to play for like 10 weeks, and they threw him into this game. He was on the practice squad all season, and they elevated him, and he actually like earned a bigger role. So look for him to potentially like be the guy that's getting some carries, and that's just the kind of year the Raiders are in, where it's like they're running experiments.
Yeah, they're. And it's Antonio Pierce. You brought in a guy who was your interim coach to be the head coach. You're just kind of throwing things out there and seeing what sticks. But
which I appreciate, because the Giants won't do that.
I love that. Exactly. I love that. I love that you're like, hey, our starting quarterback is out. Both of our starting quarterbacks who had a competition are out. Our run game is obsolete. Our defense is who it is. Fuck it. Let's bring in Desmond Ridder. Let's bring in a guy who we elevate from the practice squad. Let's just see what happens, because we know we're not going anywhere, but we at least want to see what we can do with what we've got. And like you said, I appreciate that, and I wish more teams would do that.
Well, it's kind of poetic, because like the Only Football podcast will be here in the beginning of football, and it'll be here at the end of football. The week 13 opens up with the Bears, and it closes with the Broncos. We are still in sync somehow. You're the first. For the D. I'll be the last. But yeah, it should be a good couple games here. While Rick pees for the D, and then we're gonna jump into our top 5. The games that stick out to me this week: Philly and Baltimore. They should have flexed that game to Sunday night. They left San Francisco and Buffalo there, which is fine because I feel like Josh Allen hasn't really had any national exposure this year. For some reason, Buffalo just hasn't gotten those games. That's kind of why Buffalo, who's won like 7 games in a row, they've done it in kind of a quiet fashion just because they haven't been televised. The Eagles and Ravens should have been flexed as much as I think Buffalo is due for a primetime game. And then you got some games that I think are going to be easy wins. Now, I mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again because I think it's easy for people to forget when a whole week goes by. But the NFC South, Atlanta it has a 2-game lead, and right now they have a 69% chance of making the postseason. I have Atlanta missing the postseason or potentially being the 7 seed, but I don't have them winning the division. Okay. I think the type of game that they lost to Denver, right? 38-6. They got their doors blown off of them. I think that was a season-ending loss, and I stand by that. That does happen to teams every now and then where they lose a game and it just takes the wind out of their sail completely, and they really can't just muster up the strength to continue. Atlanta had so many fluky wins, and they were still like 4-2, and they could have easily been a 1-5 team. But even with all those fluky wins, they're 6-5. They could easily be a 4-8 team. And you take the loss that they had against Denver. Now, week 13, they're playing the Chargers. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay is playing Carolina. I'm telling you, Tampa Bay, they're coming for Atlanta, and I think Atlanta is going to end up losing their division. But that's why this game's so important, because the Chargers are coming off a loss. They want to get back on the winning side of things, but Atlanta, coming off a bye week, they feel like they need this. And they're right, because if they lose, they all of a sudden drop from a 69% chance of playoffs to a 59% chance. The 7th seed would still be up for grab, because depending on what happens, though, if the Commanders beat the Titans, they'll be 8-5. If the Falcons lose, they'll be 6-6, and the Bucs would be 6-6 with a win. So this is desperation time if you're a Falcons fan, and this is a team that people had Super Bowl aspirations going into the season. So right off the bat, like, Tampa Bay, Carolina doesn't look like a game you got to watch, but it's definitely a seriously important game with the Chargers in Atlanta and then Philly and Baltimore. But I was just talking about that because you were D'ing for the peeing. Just giving some of my significant football games coming up this week.
Yeah, I was, and I'm looking at that one, and where are the Falcons? How did they do last week? They had a bye, it looks like, but you're right. This NFC South is interesting because before that, the Falcons in week
38-6.
Was it 38-6 in week 11?
Yeah, they got that. That was my whole point, was like they got the brakes beat off of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the type
Broncos.
of loss that ruins your season. I really do, because remember, they were like 5-2, and they could have easily been 1-6 or 2-5. And even with all of those lucky bounces, they're still looking at a 500 record, which is just crazy.
And
I feel like their luck's out.
Yeah, and the Broncos have done this to what? Both of those teams already. They've destroyed the Bucs, and they destroyed the Falcons.
NFC South, and
they swept them.
All of them bad.
Yeah. So they swept them. I thought so. I was like, the Broncos have done just absolute work.
The
NFC
Panthers,
South.
the Bucs, and the Falcons all got fucking destroyed. Sean Payton didn't forget.
Yeah. He's like, I know these teams, and we're gonna fucking destroy them. But this division, yeah, man, it's very important these next few weeks coming up, because it really, at the end of the day, it's between the Bucs and the Falcons.
And who do you trust more? Baker Mayfield in the continuity that he has with Mike Evans and And yeah, Chris Godwin's not there, but guess what? Bucky Irving, he is. And if you play fantasy football, guys, he is going to be the guy next year. Right now, he's still like he's like get a 75-25 snap share with Rachaad White, but next year, he's the 3-down back. He is going to take off, kind of like Devon Achane with the Dolphins this year. But Bucky Irving, like I had to start him because Breece Hall was on a bye. He got me like 28 points.
Oh, smart move.
And I picked up Tua because Josh Allen was on a bye, and he got me 28 points too.
And really, it's like there's so much talent on both of these teams, but it's like I would much rather take Baker, but his coach, God, I always forget his name.
The Liam Cohen?
Bowles. No,
Todd Bowles.
It's like I would prefer Raheem Morris at this point in terms of head coach, but I like the Bucs' talent because they're a bit, Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield are the difference, I think, obviously in this case, right? Is for Kirk Cousins' first year on the Falcons, and Baker took the Bucs to the playoffs last year, and they won, and they beat the brakes off the Eagles. It's just
and almost beat the Lions.
Yeah, it's like who wants it more now at the end of the day, right? So
they should start Penix now.
Oh,
they should start Penix now because when Denver beat them the way they did, Penix came into the game.
He did.
And Rick, he was better.
Oh, really?
He was better. He was immediately better. And it was actually like one of those things where you're watching, like, I'm glad this guy wasn't starting the whole game.
Yeah.
Jesus. I don't know. Like, what are they playing for? Are we
yeah.
How committed are we to a player versus the overall success of the team? And I never really understood the hiring of Raheem Morris. I got nothing personally. Obviously, I don't know the guy, but like,
because I hate that dude.
I know. I just didn't understand it. I was like, he's already been a head coach. It didn't work out. Yeah. I just don't know. Like the NFL is trending. You got to get an offensive guy, and people keep trying to force the Vic Fangios and Raheem Morrises, and it's like there's not that many that actually pan out. Like you got D'Amico
not working
in Houston, but like Salah's fired. Like who's the defensive coach that's thriving right now? Like, can you think of one besides Mike Tomlin who's like an outsider?
Buffalo Bills guy, what's his name?
Sean McDermott.
Sean McDermott. He's the only other one.
Yeah, but you got to have a Josh Allen also.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's going to be a lot of really important games, and then the Philly Baltimore game. That's fascinating because I said this after Monday Night Football. I was like, dude, 40 years from now, our grandkids are going to be like, what was it like seeing Terrell Davis go against Barry Sanders or Barry Sanders go against Walter Payton?
Yep.
This is like what they're going to say when they talk Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. So I looked into it. I was like, how many times has Derrick Henry and Saquon played each other? They have played each other twice in their career.
Oh, wow.
Last time they played each other, Derrick Henry went, or I might be flipping them, but one time Derrick Henry went off, Saquon didn't, and the Titans won. And then another time Saquon Barkley went off, Derrick Henry didn't, and the Giants won. So they're like 1-1 on the series. And in both games, the running back that ate, and I'm not talking about like kind of good. I'm saying in both of those games, one of the running backs had like 150 plus yards, and that team won. So I'm gonna just say whoever has a better rushing day between those two running backs is gonna win the football game. But they should have flexed that to Sunday night.
I don't know. Do you like Jalen Hurts or do you like
Lamar
Jackson better? Yeah.
But it depends. It depends because the thing about the Eagles is that they're I don't know, man. I like the defense better for the Eagles. I mean, the Ravens defense has been sus all year long. So I think the Eagles are the better team, and I think they're going to win.
Yeah. I'm
But
gonna
I think
take them to
Saquon's
score more
running-
points.
I think Saquon's just having a better year than Derrick Henry too.
God, they're both having such good years though. And it's like you like Lamar, but also you like the Eagles defense more. And then it's like you like John Harbaugh more than Nick Sirianni. And it's like, fuck. Who do I pick in that game?
But
That's
I like
such a
the
good game.
coordinators better for the Eagles.
Exactly. And it's like, shit. So there's
Yeah.
a pretty evenly matched
Could be a Super Bowl.
game. It could be.
Could be.
Absolutely.
Rick, I think it's time for our
Is it
our
time?
motherfucking
I'm a fucking
Top 5, no debating. Top 5, top 5, top 5.
top five. Kyle?
top 5.
Top 5. Let's get into our top 5. We were gonna record this and just kind of we were gonna do it just a recording, but because it is Thanksgiving tomorrow, we got a few games on tomorrow and the Black Friday game. We were talking about those before. Obviously, we had to go live. We had to go live and tell you guys our predictions. But let's talk about our top 5. Now, just a little bit of context. Last week, going into week 12, Kyle and I both had the Lions at number 1, the Bills at number 2, the Eagles at 3. I had the Chiefs at 4 and the Steelers at 5. Kyle had the Chargers at 4 and the Broncos at 5. So let's talk about what we're going to do here going into week 13, Kyle. So I think you started off first last week. So I will start off this week going into week 13. At number 5, the Baltimore Ravens are back in my top 5. They had a very good game against the Chargers. Chargers are one of the better defenses. It was the Harbaugh Bowl, and John Harbaugh beats Jim again. I think he's like 2-0, 3-0 lifetime, something like that. They've only played a very few times, and one of them was a Super Bowl. But they were able to go up against that defense and get the dub, man. Lamar Jackson looked good. Derrick Henry looked good. Zay Flowers was nowhere to be seen. He's on my fantasy team, so fucking dog shit. Regardless, I'm going with the Ravens at number 5. Kyle?
And number 5, I got the Denver Broncos. I got the Broncos. Bo Nix making history seemingly every week, taking care of the football, doing everything they need to do offensively to score 28 to 30 points. They're doing it was funny because it felt like offensively we had a bad week and yet we almost scored 30. And that's just like a totally different we're in a different era right now. And then the defense, I think this is the best defense in football. Surtain, and then you got Nick Bonito and Zach Allen, who are just game wreckers. We didn't have Zach Allen against the Raiders, and you could kind of tell. And we're going to have him back. But this is one of the best defenses in the league. I think they can keep the score low against every opponent, and now I think their offense can get the job done and beat, I think, almost everybody. I think they're one of the more complete teams in the league, even though they do have a rookie quarterback.
I am very excited about seeing the Broncos in the playoffs. I cannot wait to actually have a rooting interest in the playoffs again.
But don't jinx it. We still got to take care.
I know, but
we got to
like,
win.
I know, and this is just me kind of being the optimist, but this is me being the optimist because I actually want a rooting interest in the playoffs instead of just watching great games. I actually want to be like, fucking let's go Broncos, because I'm going to wear my Surtain jersey and I'm going to wear that Denver Broncos hat I got from Portland. So I just want to put it out there that the Broncos are going there. I'm putting it out in the universe. Let's go. There you go. There you go. Give me that D. At number 4, they're not changing from last week. I've got the Chiefs. I've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, they were able to beat the Carolina Panthers, although it was very scary. It was a 3-point game. They're the Chiefs, man. They're winning. And Kyle's going to leave the only football studio because he hates me. But no, man, I gotta go. I gotta stay with the Chiefs. They won. it's Patrick Mahomes, it's all these guys, Andy Reid. I can't say that enough, and it becomes really annoying to say. I can see that, to just be like, yeah, but it's Patrick Mahomes and it's Andy Reid. Like, I get that, but they're winning, and they're the only other 10-win team in the NFL right now. And while Bryce Young looked good, and they only won by 3 games on a field goal, they still got to be in the top 5 because of what they've done for the entire season. So I've got the Chiefs at 4.
All right. At number 4.
Oh my God. Oh,
Give me the
my
Green
God.
Bay Packers.
I'll give you a swift kick in the ass is what I'll give you.
Na, 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 na. Go, Pack, go. I gotta go with the Packers, man. They're winning a lot of their games right now, but like I said, it's the completeness of the team. It's the fact that Josh Jacobs is coming off a 164-yard performance and 3 touchdowns. It's the fact that their weakness was that they weren't a good red zone offense. And they went into the red zone 5 times last week and scored 5 touchdowns. The fact that the Packers are getting better at this point of the year, I think is a really good sign. I think the defense is playing really good. I think they're coached really well. Of course, Jordan Love got some turnovers, got to clean that stuff up. But we saw what we saw last year against Dallas. We saw them nearly knock off the 49ers in the divisional round, came up short. I think they added the right weapons like Josh Jacobs, like Xavier McKinney. I think that they've cleaned some stuff up. And I think last year they were just getting hot at this time of the year. I think this time of the year is when Packers start playing their best football. And yeah, I think the Packers are going to be another dangerous playoff team this year.
Okay. I respect it. I don't. At number 3 for me, they had a bye week. So they go down just 1 spot from me last week.
Can't get fired on your day off.
But you can get lower. You can get demoted on your day off. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills just because my number 2 team showed out. But I'm going with the Buffalo Bills at number 3. They had their bye week. They're still a force to reckon with in the AFC. They beat the Chiefs this year. They're one of the only loss that the Chiefs have had, and the Bills were able to do it. Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level. That entire team also kind of suffered the same preseason critiques or criticism that the Broncos kind of had, which was, who do they have on the offensive side and who do they have on the defensive side? A lot of these guys left. They got rid of what's his name? Diggs. Yes, thank you, Stephon Diggs. They got rid of Diggs. Who's the number 1? Blah 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 blah. And here they are at the top of the AFC East. Yes, most of the AFC East sucks, but they're doing it really, really well with an MVP-like performance on the season from Josh Allen, who didn't throw an interception for like 8 weeks. Remember that? So we got to keep that in mind. So Bills on their day off get demoted, but still stay in my top 5 at number 3.
Yeah, I can probably say I didn't fall for it. All these people said that, oh, the Bills are going to... No. I was like, Josh Allen's going to win MVP. He's going to have the best year. They're going to be amazing. And one of the things we were right about here. And I agree with you. I got the Bills at number 3. And I didn't demote them because they had a bye week. I demoted them because there's a team playing better. And that is not to say that it's going to affect Buffalo in any way, shape, or form, because that team is in a different conference. So for Super Bowl purposes, I still have Buffalo as the best team in the AFC right now. And I'm going to keep Buffalo there. I know a lot of people that are Baltimore Raven fans are probably watching this and they're like, just it's wildly upset. But I do feel like the Ravens have a very up and down type of week to week stuff where it's like, I mean, they came off that loss to the Steelers where they couldn't score a touchdown. I mean, they scored 1, but they just like, I can't have a team this high that I don't know what I'm going to get every single week. You know what? Buffalo, maybe when they're at their best and Baltimore's at their best, yeah, maybe Baltimore is better. But the amount of time that Buffalo is at their best seems like way more consistent. I feel like with Baltimore, I'm always like, I know what they're capable of, but I don't know if I'm going to get it. With Buffalo, we know what we're going to get every single week, and that's why Buffalo hasn't lost since week 4. And there's something to be said about every single week continuing to pile wins. Baltimore hasn't done that. Not many teams have done that besides 1, 2, and 3 on my power rankings.
And at number 2, I think I speak for both Kyle and I when I say the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles. Oh, man. They've just played so well. We talked about Saquon earlier and what he's meant to this team, and really kind of the city of Philadelphia, where Philadelphia was completely against Sirianni. They were losing hope in Jalen Hurts. And then Saquon came in and said, settle down, guys. I got this. We talked about the Vic Fangio defense kind of starting to look much better. Jalen Hurts has so much pressure off of him now that he has Saquon Barkley, and he's hurdling people backwards. A.J. Brown, and I mentioned it earlier, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith were out for a few weeks, and it didn't matter because Saquon Barkley was there to basically take the load of the offense on his shoulders and just win games. And like you said, they've just been playing outstanding. You had a short about it. The playoffs are going, or the road to the Super Bowl is either going through Philly or it's going through the Lions. That's why I got Eagles at number 2.
Yeah, and I got the Eagles at 2 as well. Let me just put it very simple. Saquon Barkley's averaging 150 scrimmage yards per game in his first 11 games. Now, there's really no reason to believe that he's not going to maintain that, because even when he goes under 150, he squeaks in a couple games where he goes over 200 and it balances it out. What we do know is that the Eagles are dedicated to giving the ball to Saquon Barkley 20 plus times a game, because nobody can stop him right now. And just to put that into context, how good is Saquon in this year? Well, that 150 yards, if he even just maintains that pace, he's going to go over 2,500 rushing yards. The record is 2,100, you said? And we're talking about a guy going over the record by what would normally take a running back an extra 3 to 4 games to get to. Saquon's he's going to hit 2,500 yards rushing. He's going to be the MVP of the league. And it's going to fuck up my Josh Allen bet. But I mean, you got to just appreciate it when you're watching him backwards hurdle and run the ball the way he is. Like, you got to just take a step back and recognize, wow, I'm actually watching one of the greatest running back seasons in the history of the NFL, if not the greatest. It's happening in our generation. How lucky are we that we have the privilege to watch this? It's truly just, if you love the game of football, you can really appreciate what you're seeing. But yeah, he's the running back on the Eagles. This is going to be a legendary season for Saquon Barkley, and ultimately, people are going to know that was the difference between the Eagles being the best team in the NFL.
How lucky are we, and how unlucky are the Giants and Giants fans? All right, Kyle.
So unlucky, but it's like he probably wouldn't be this good with the Giants, to be fair.
No, he would not. He would not. All right, Kyle. 1, 2, 3.
Chargers.
Lions.
No, I get Lions.
Imagine Kyle just went, fucking Chiefs, let's go. What? Oh my God. Lions nowhere to be found. Lions at number 1. Again, it's the Super Bowl on the NFC side going through Philly, or it's going through Detroit. Detroit has been consistent in everything they've done. At this point, I feel like there's not much else to say other than they just keep winning. Kind of how I've been a broken record with the Chiefs, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, the defense. It's the same with the Lions at this point. It's just that it's better than last year when Dan Campbell was talking about it's hard to get to the NFC Championship. It's even harder to get to the Super Bowl, and it's even harder to win the Super Bowl. And yet here they are in great position to not have an away game during the playoffs, have the Super Bowl go through Detroit, and somehow being better than last year after all the things that they accomplished last year, it's like this team is just so much better. Jared Goff, Dave Montgomery, Jameer Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the defense, Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson. I forget the defensive coordinator's name, but all of these guys across the board, from ownership down, it has just been nothing but great vibes since Dan Campbell entered this room, or entered that stadium in Detroit. And it's been nothing but great vibes. And this is what happens when you create a culture and you get the right guys in the building and your team respects you and loves you as a head coach and as an organization. This is what happens. This is the fruits of your labor. That's why the Lions are number one.
Yeah, the Lions look like the Super Bowl team, and if that's the case, there's going to be 2 Pro Bowl running spots that are going to open up to other people because Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery probably both make the Pro Bowl this year, with Saquon Barkley being the third. I'm gonna give some love to the defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn because
Glenn, yes, thank you.
This defense, what do we know? It's as good as the offense. It could be better than the offense. I'm not really sure. It's hard to say when both are so good. But what we do know is that in the 6 games since losing Aiden Hutchinson, the defense has allowed 316 yards per game and only 15.3 points. That's actually down from the first 5 games where they gave up 329 yards and 18 points. So obviously you can't replace a guy like Hutch, but what you're seeing is as the season progresses, this unit, the defensive unit, is playing together. They're learning each other's strengths. There's rookie cornerback on the field and Terrion Arnold. This team is just overall getting better as the season progresses, even with Aiden Hutchinson being gone. And it's not to say like, oh, they're better without him. Of course not. Just imagine how much better they would be with him at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you talk about the complete package. You got a very strong defense. You got a quarterback that throws more touchdown passes and incompletions. You got 2 running backs that are Pro Bowlers. You got Sam Laporta. You got one of the best wide receivers in Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's one of those years where it's like, if the Lions don't win a Super Bowl this year, there's no reason for it. And it makes you go, well, then when? Because we've had the same feeling before with San Francisco. And San Francisco was like this. Not last year. Their defense was down. They fired their defensive coordinator. The year before that, the 49ers were as good as the Lions are this year, but Brock Purdy broke his elbow. Yeah. And that derailed their season. If the Lions can stay healthy, there's nobody in the NFL that is going to be able to beat them unless they lose to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. And this is the Lions' year, period.
There you go, guys. That's our top 5 down there on the ticker. Check it out. Let us know what you guys think in the comments about Kyle's and I's top 5. And that was
Top 5, no debating. Top 5.
Kyle. I think it's time for the motherfucker.
Welcome to the Chives with Rick. We are.
What's up?
What? Just a couple things really quick. Who's got the most to gain and the most to lose in week 13, just based off probability? Well, I'm going to give it to you. This is just good to know. Good information for you guys to know. Of course, every single week that we continue, there's going to be teams that have a ton to lose. But what is it this week? Okay. So this was written by Ali Buapuri. He's the senior director at NFL.com. Okay. A team's chances of winning. Okay. NFL playoff picture entering week 13. Chiefs and Bills are both 99% chance of getting in. With a win, they go to 100, which means they would clinch. Now, look at this. If the Chiefs win, they have a 67% chance of claiming the number 1 seed. But if the Bills win, they go up to 29%. So
wow.
That I mean, the Chiefs are slowly running away with the 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Lions, on the other hand, if they win, they would have a 70% chance of the 1 seed. And the Eagles, only 17%. So Eagles fans every single week are going to be hoping that somehow, some way, somebody opens the door for that number 1 seed.
Yeah.
Especially because we know what the NFC Championship game is, and they don't want to go to Detroit. They want them to come to Philly. I mean, Goff is a much better
Yep.
quarterback in a dome, and if you give him a dome game all the way to the Super Bowl, which is also in a dome, it's going to go well for the Lions. The Dolphins, Colts, and Bengals are all three on the playoff bubble. Right now, the Dolphins have a 14% chance. The Colts have a 23% chance, and that's what I wanted to point out. Rick, have you seen the Colts' remaining schedule?
I have not looked at it.
It is
no.
alarmingly easy besides the Broncos. Look at this. They got the Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars.
They should only lose to the Broncos.
Which would put them at 6, 7, 8, 9 wins.
Wow.
And that would make things
yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Now, the Dolphins have 5 wins right now. Now, their only hard game is against the Packers. But then after that, it's the same thing where it's a little bit easy, but not all the way. So they have the Browns, 49ers, Texans, Jets twice, and the Packers. So the path for the Dolphins, even though the Colts also have the same record, it's just a much more difficult path for the Dolphins. But I feel like we all think the Dolphins are a much better team than the Colts when they're playing their best football. It just might be too little too late. Now, if the Dolphins lose to the Packers, they would have a 7% chance of making the playoffs. If the Colts lose, they would drop to a 12% chance of making the playoffs. A win for the Dolphins would only boost them from 14% to 22%. This is going to be a week-to-week slowly percentage rise, and obviously all that is dependent on if the Broncos or Chargers start losing. They also need help. They can't just win out, and if Denver wins out, then it gets them nowhere. So they'll be rooting for us, and the Colts will play the Broncos next week, so they'll have a little bit of control over that. But the Cardinals are the other bubble teams for the NFC. Right now, the Cardinals have a 51% chance of making the playoffs. So do the Bucks. Like I said, the Bucks are my division winner. If they win, they have a 61% chance of making the playoffs. And the Cardinals would have a 66% chance with a win. With a loss, the Cardinals would drop to a 40%. The Bucks would drop to a 30%. And the Rams and the 49ers. This is kind of weird, and I wanted to ask you. The 49ers, everybody acted like the Lambeau game, that if the 49ers lost, that they were done, that there was no way they could make the playoffs. I just want to say, I think this is weird because let's say that the NFC West was all tied, but they were 1 game different. And it was, let's say they were 9-3, and then the 49ers were 8-4. Would you say that the 49ers were out?
No, not at all.
So there's something weird going on, whereas if you have a winning record and you're 1 game back, people think that you're in the mix. But if you're 5-6 and you're 1 game back, then people say that you have no shot at making the playoffs. I don't understand the difference. The 49ers are 1 game behind the NFC leader right now, or the NFC West. So I don't understand the logic of everybody saying the 49ers have no shot at making the playoffs. They're probably the most trustworthy team in the division. And I know it's a weird year. I actually called this too. My exact words were the vibes are not right. And they haven't been. And Brock Purdy's not healthy. I don't know if you've heard about this or not. He had to get an MRI done.
I heard, yeah. And obviously with CMC being out, George Kittle going through injuries, Brandon Ayuk is another guy like Dak, got paid and then got hurt. Like you said, the vibes were right, and yet somehow those vibes turned into injuries. And while I understand what you're saying, like, how is it that they're 5-6, but they're a game back, and yet nobody trusts, because they could be the most trustworthy team.
Exactly.
But it's just the way that the season has unfolded that a lot of people are going, nah, that's probably why.
Yeah, but then you also have to say, well, we trust Brock Purdy or Kyler Murray or the Rams. And I just feel like all those teams are in the same position. That's the difference. I don't have one above the other. So I think it should be pretty even. But you're right. Like, what's going on with Brock Purdy, and he might be in a little bit of trouble, and it's not good for him, because if he doesn't play anymore this year, I don't know if he gets paid $60 million a year.
True.
They're going to probably, wouldn't you want to see one more year from him if he was playing for your team?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so not good for him. So I'm sure he's going to want to play, but yeah, the main things right now, AFC, it's the Dolphins and the Colts. And for the NFC, you got the entire NFC West on the bubble. And not just the NFC West, but also the Buccaneers, who are going to need Atlanta to lose a couple, but I think Atlanta will, and it probably happens. What, Rick, who do you got, Chargers or Falcons? Falcons need this.
I think I got Chargers. Coaching, defense, Herbert. I think the more complete team. Looking at this game just on a pure predictions, I think I got the Chargers. I don't know what happened in Atlanta the week prior against Denver, where they just look like shit. Unless this bye week is going to be like a complete reset, I got to go with the Chargers, man. They put up a really good fight against the Ravens. I got to go Chargers.
Yeah, you never want to go into a bye week like that. And last but not least, Daniel Jones was signed to the Minnesota Vikings. He said he wanted to go to a contender, so he is a Viking now. And that is the last little tidbit of news that I had. Very, very strange to see Daniel Jones say that he wanted to go to a playoff team. I was like, why does he want to be a backup so bad? I wasn't sure about it, but Daniel Jones, a Minnesota Viking, I'm not sure how it's going to work out, but if there was anybody that thought Daniel Jones was good, it was probably the Vikings, because that's when Daniel Jones took the Giants into Minnesota and won a playoff game, was against Kevin O'Connell, where he had the best game of his career. And that's ultimately why he got paid that money. So we'll see. I mean, there's just no guarantee about JJ McCarthy's health, and Sam Darnold's on a 1-year deal. So I get it, but we'll see. I don't really have any thoughts on that.
I think your camera went out, Kyle.
Yeah, camera went out. But that's all I had anyway.
All right, perfect. Because my lights are going out. It's a great day here at the Only Football Podcast.
We're crashing.
That was we're crashing and burning. That was. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Gonna quickly shout out KC, Lil E was in here. We had Crafty, we had Nick, and we had E-Dub in here as well. Thank you guys so much for being here for the Only Football Podcast Thanksgiving episode special. Went over the Thanksgiving games, top five, and of course the chives with Kyle. Go follow us on X and now Rick at NFL with Kyle, and at Only Football Pod. Go follow us on our YouTube page at Yo I'm Rick and at Kyle Kitzman. Go follow us there. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, become a member, only $2.99 a month to be a part of the Only Football fam. Go follow us on Twitch. Like everything, we would appreciate it if you shared this, told all your friends, your family over Thanksgiving dinner. Let them know. If you want the best insight on the NFL, go follow the Only Football Podcast. Kyle, you got anything else before we get up out of here?
That is all I got, brother.
All right. Well, thank you to everyone who is here. And Kyle, always a good time, brother.
Always a good time.